Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. Okay, let me set the scene for you. This happened a couple of years back when I, Jessica, 24F, and the father of my first two kids, Mike, 30M, were going through some major relationship problems. Mike was working the graveyard shift as a janitor at a nursing home, while I was busting my butt during the day, studying nursing at college. We had a 2-year-old daughter and a 3-month-old son at the time. Things were really tense between us. There was this woman, let's call her Stacy, who worked at the same place as Mike. I got to know her pretty well since I'd sometimes drop off Mike's lunch when he was on shift. We were friendly, or so I thought. Mike's job was to wax the floors at night when the residents were asleep. Well, one night my cousin happened to spot Mike and Stacy having drinks together at a local bar during Mike's supposed work hours. You can imagine the massive fight that followed. Mike tried to brush it off as just friends hanging out and promised it wouldn't happen again. But about a month later, he dropped the bomb. He wanted to keep things amicable for the kids' sake and suggested we just stay friends. Mind you, the house was in my name. I paid all the bills with my grants and scholarships, and even the car Mike drove belonged to me. Being the nice person I was, I agreed to let him stay until he could figure something out. I still let him use my car to get to work and cooked for him like nothing had changed. But then, Mike started getting all lovey-dovey again, and we ended up hooking up a few times. One morning, as I was nursing our son, Mike's phone went off. I know, I shouldn't have looked, but curiosity got the better of me. And what did I find? Turns out, Mike had been carrying on a full-blown relationship with Stacy this whole time, right under my nose. That's when the pettiness took over. I slipped back into bed, stark naked, and Mike cuddled up to me like always. Using his phone, I took some very graphic, intimate photos of us. Then I sent those pictures to Stacy, along with a nice little message explaining exactly what Mike had been up to with both of us. As Mike's phone was going off with Stacy's frantic replies, I calmly got dressed and started packing his stuff. A few hours later, Mike finally woke up and reached for his phone first thing. The look on his face when he saw my messages was priceless. He tried to call Stacy, but I interrupted him midway. Don't bother, I said. I've already filled your girlfriend in on all the details, photos included. Your stuff is out on the porch, boxed up. You don't live here anymore, so I suggest you call Stacy to come pick you up because you're not using my car ever again. Mike started blubbering about having nowhere to go. Well, that's your problem to figure out, I told him before slamming the door in his face. I had wasted 6 years of my life on this man-child, giving him my body, heart, and soul, and he had the audacity to cheat on me with Stacy while still sleeping with me at the same time. Was it petty? Hell yeah, but Mike deserved every bit of it. The next one is an entitled people story. I've lived in my house for over 20 years now. It's nothing fancy, just a regular suburban home on a quarter-acre lot, but it's mine and I love it. My neighborhood is your typical suburban community. Quiet streets, neat lawns, and friendly folks. Well, most of them are friendly anyway. A few years back, a homeowners association moved into the neighborhood. I never wanted any part of it, so I made sure not to sign anything or attend any meetings when they came knocking. Still, they slowly grew their membership over the next couple years until it seemed like everyone but me was part of the homeowner association. At first, it was no big deal, but then the homeowner association board started getting really nosy and bossy. They would drive around writing people up for having a bush slightly too close to the sidewalk or a porch light that was the wrong color. Stuff that seemed crazy to me over nothing but personal preference. I figured as long as I kept to myself and didn't join, they couldn't really bother me. Oh, how wrong I was. It started one Saturday morning when I was out mowing my lawn, a large white utility truck with a cherry picker parked in front of my house. I walked over to see what they were doing on my property. A couple guys in orange vests hopped out and said they were here to prep for a billboard installation. A billboard? On my land? I told them no way, there must be some mistake. They shrugged and said they were just doing their job, taking directions from the homeowner association board. They had permits and everything. I was furious. When did this happen? How could they get permits for my land without my permission? I told the workers to get lost until I got to the bottom of this. They seemed relieved to pack up and leave. Still fuming, I marched over to Marcy's house. She was the head of the homeowner association board and busybody queen of the neighborhood. When she opened the door, I got right to it. Marcy, what's the big idea trying to put a billboard on my property? I'm not part of your homeowner association and I never gave permission for that. She had the audacity to look offended. Well, Harold, we discussed this at the last homeowner association meeting. That empty plot of land is an eyesore, so we're installing a billboard to improve the look of the neighborhood. My blood boiled. That's not an empty plot of land, that's my backyard, and I'm not in your stupid homeowner association, so I don't go to your meetings. You can't just put signs on my land. Marcy pursed her lips. You should really join the homeowner association like everyone else, Harold. We know what's best for the neighborhood. I'd had enough of her condescending tone. It's my property, and if you think you can take it over without my say-so, you've got another thing coming, I said. That billboard better be gone by tomorrow, or you'll be hearing from my lawyer. I didn't wait for her response before storming off. Still fuming, I called my buddy Jim, who worked at the permitting office. I explained the situation, and he was just as shocked as me. No way, Harold, he said. They definitely didn't come through proper channels for a permit on private property. I'll look into this. The next day, I was satisfied to see no sign of the Billboard company, but I wasn't about to let the homeowner association off the hook. I called the lawyer I used for my house closing and explained I wanted to sue the homeowner association for trespassing and trying to illegally seize my land. He said he'd be happy to write a demand letter pro bono since the behavior was so outrageous. A week later, I got a call from a very subdued Marcy saying the homeowner association wanted to settle this issue outside of court. I agreed to meet her at her house again. Marcy sat me down and said, Look, Harold, I apologize for this misunderstanding. Our homeowner association board clearly overstepped in trying to install that billboard on your property without permission. I crossed my arms. It's going to take more than an apology to make this right. Marcy nodded. Of course, we took a vote last night and the homeowner association has agreed to pay you $20,000 for the inconvenience as long as you agree not to pursue legal action against us. I pretended to think about it for a minute, but I had already decided to accept that offer before I walked in the door. Fine. I can agree to that as long as you also put it in writing that my property is excluded from any homeowner association jurisdiction or decision-making from here on out, I said. Marcy agreed and had the documents drafted up. I looked them over carefully before signing. She handed me the $20,000 check on the spot. I shook her hand and said I'm glad we could resolve this amicably. On my way home, I deposited the check and then stopped by the hardware store for some supplies. The homeowner association might have forked over the money, but I wasn't about to let them think they could walk all over me again. Over the next weekend, I erected a nice tall fence around my entire property line. No more unwanted eyesores or intrusions on my land. Thanks to the homeowner association's $20,000 gift, I was also able to upgrade my porch and patio setup. Every time I sit out on my new outdoor furniture with a cold lemonade, I can't help but smile thinking about how the homeowner association's stupid attempt to steal my land backfired in so many ways. Justice was served and my property was finally free from their meddling hands. The next one is a petty revenge story, so I'm a sachem. At the time, I was pregnant with our third baby and was fully in charge of our finances because at the time my husband was completely irresponsible and it was annoying. A few months prior, he had made a comment about having an OF and I was taken aback but wasn't super upset about it and didn't feel like I could. I was trying to keep the peace because he was being restless in our marriage, don't judge me for it. Fast forward a few months and he told me the credit cards were maxed. My mind went to the worst, but out of $3,000 credit limit, only about $100 was of. After a while, he told me he wasn't using it anymore, and I was going through the credit card statements and see another of charge. I was furious at that point. I put off so much for myself, no new clothes, no nails or hair done, no extra fun spending or restaurants, going without so much to put our money toward paying off this debt. So I combed through a dozen credit cards, and from the very beginning, every statement, and I added up all the charges, totaling $250, not too bad, and I went to my bank account, which we used for savings, that I had been meticulously funding with spare money to pay off a loan we had, $1,000. I withdrew $250 homeowner association and went to Ulta and bought myself a Sunday Riley skincare set. Later, he was asking me if we were set to pay off the loan, and I told him, oh no, I counted how much money you've given to these other girls to get their crap taken care of after going without, that you're putting on credit cards and putting us behind, so you'll have to wait a while before paying off that loan, since you set us back. He just sat there looking at me and I looked at him. He admitted he didn't have a leg to stand on, and he promised he wouldn't spend any more money on porn, and he hasn't, and he's done a complete 180 from how he used to be, for many more reasons than this. It was one of the only mic drop moments of my life, and it was so beautiful. The next one is a malicious compliance story. I was working a weekend gig at a carnival outdoor festival circa 2002. My station for the day was working the large inflatable slide. Steps going up on the right side and the slide on the left with a pad on the bottom. Basically, my job was to keep the line moving smoothly with minimal injuries. When a kid was at the top, I'd send the next up. This would give the child plenty of time to move off of the landing zone once they got to the bottom and free from any possible danger from the next participant. Everything was running fine until Karen showed up. Her child was about 7 and minded my instructions well, but when he reached the bottom, he began jumping up and down. No problem, he had a few seconds before the next child reached the top, but I asked him kindly to come down. He made his way over until Karen told him he could keep jumping. I gave it a few more seconds until the next child was ready to come down and asked the mother to please remove her child. She then started to borderline yell at me that her son wasn't hurting anything. At this point, I had to tell the child at the top to please wait. I had a back and forth with the mother explaining that it's for his protection and it was holding up the line. This went on for a while when finally other parents started to complain and shout while the line continued to back up. She yelled at me to just send the next kid down as her son would be fine and she would get him down. Cue the MC. The child who had been waiting patiently at the top was significantly larger and was wearing jogging pants and socks. As soon as I signaled for him to come on, he jumped straight up and hit the slide with max velocity. Pretty sure he set a high-speed record because by the time he hit the landing zone, he just skidded across the top and hit the other child with his feet. This sent the little boy flying about 10 feet onto the pavement. I didn't say a word, and neither did Karen. I just stared at her while she picked up her screaming child off of the pavement and left. Anyway, I did feel bad for the child, but I hope Karen learned a valuable lesson. The next one is an entitled people's story. I, 20F, have a younger brother, 17M, who was diagnosed with autism when he was around 2 years old. He is very social but socially naive and can't read well or do basic math. While he is 17 physically, he is about 10, 12 mentally. My mother, 50F, has spoiled him rotten since he was a child, and it's turned him into an entitled a-hole. My brother has our mother wrapped around his finger. Over the years, he has learned to manipulate her to get what he wants. He knows how to wear her down, nagging her until she gives him what she wants. For example, he'll ask her to buy him something and constantly berate her and whine about it until she gives in. He knows she won't put her foot down. She is completely unaware of his manipulation and swears up and down she is in full control. Everybody else is aware of his manipulation except her. One time I had some friends over from school and they lamented to me that my brother acted completely different around my family than he did other students. To everybody outside of our house, he's a lively guy who may ask a lot of questions but has everybody's best interest in mind. At home, however, he speaks over everybody and has to be the center of conversation. If we are in the car and having a conversation outside of him, he will shout over us and interject with something completely off topic in order to center himself. My mom just lets it happen, since if she doesn't, he will just keep saying, "Mom, Mom, Mom," over and over. He's been manipulative since he was a child. He had a strict bedtime of 8 p.m., or so that's what it was supposed to be. Even in elementary school, he was figuring out ways to get what he wanted. My mom would call for him to come for dinner at 7:30, but he would procrastinate by playing video games and not come down until 8, his bedtime. My mom didn't want him to starve, which is valid, but instead of punishing him by taking away the video games, she just let him do it night after night after night with no preventative measures. Even though I was a child, I could see right through it. One time I was visiting from college and my mom wanted the 3 of us to go see a movie. My brother whined and whined about me going, saying he wanted it to just be him and out mother. To his dismay, I got a ticket. Then half an hour later, 2 hours before the movie, my brother starts yelling that his friend is coming with us. We had only bought 3 tickets, and there weren't any left by our seats. Instead of telling him no, my mother started to scramble to find a spot for my brother's friend to sit. I ended up having to put my foot down, saying that he made such a fuss about me coming instead of just the 2 of them that he shouldn't be inviting anybody else. Thankfully, I was actually listened to this time. What I'm not listened to, however, is the dreaded topic of social media. My brother is very close to becoming a lolco. He thankfully hasn't gone viral yet, but he's obsessed with fame and posting whatever comes to mind on social media. This has gotten him in trouble at school for posting inappropriate content. My father has taken away his phone camera and his social media multiple times, as well as limited my brother's screen time. However, my brother will whine and throw a tantrum about it to my mom, which causes her to go to my dad and get him to change it. My dad changes it back, since if he doesn't, it will start a massive argument between him and my mother. She's where my brother gets his entitled personality from. I've tried telling him over and over that this is a horrible idea, even giving them examples of lolcos such as Chris Chan and Daniel Larson, people I know my brother has the potential to become like. Recently, he has developed epilepsy and started having seizures, which has given him another reason to be coddled by my mother. Obviously, I don't want him to have a stress-induced seizure, but he creates conflict anytime I'm around. Just last night at around midnight, he was blasting music down the hallway. This has been a problem for years now, but my parents think I'm overreacting about it. I knocked on his door and told him to turn it down. He said no, and that he was going to turn it up after I went back to bed. He did, so I went and got my father. There was a whole argument between them where my brother lied repeatedly, saying he hadn't heard me despite our conversation and that he wasn't playing anything. Thankfully, my dad, who is aware of his manipulation, saw right through it. He got his phone taken away, but of course he didn't see himself in the wrong because in his mind he can't be in the wrong. He yelled things to me such as, "Duck you, this is your fault," and "I don't care about my sisters." Well, this morning I was lamenting to my mom about how frustrated I was. I'm only home for the week, and the least he could do was be decent. There's no reason I can't get a good night's sleep in my own home. My father overheard the conversation and came in saying I needed to be less agitated when talking about my brother to my parents. I've been dealing with his BS for years, and I told my father that I was, in fact, agitated, and those were my true feelings. He went on a bit of a tangent about how my brother's epilepsy and his medication are making him agitated and irritable. I was shocked. My brother has always been an a-hole. My dad said he wasn't excusing it, but it definitely came across as it. Anyways, I'm mainly annoyed that there is now another reason for my brother to be coddled while my sister and I helplessly watch. One of my main issues with it is that I also have my fair share of mental problems that are mostly ignored because of him. I have anxiety, but mine comes in second to his. My mom will mention that yelling makes him anxious and that I shouldn't yell at him because of it. As if all the stuff he does doesn't stress me out. Every time I talk to him, I worry that I'm going to be insulted. He will pick you apart if you let him. He insults my mother on what she wears all the time, and he has started to comment on my weight despite me being relatively skinny. He's overall a crappy person, and my parents are starting to realize that. Though I don't think my mom can truly come to terms with the fact that not only has she raised her son into an entitled a-hole, but also that he has been manipulating her basically ever since he was born. The next one is an entitled parent's story. Yesterday was a rough day for me at the gym. Deadlifts are a wonderful exercise, make no mistake, but the last thing you want to do after completing a set of deadlifts is smile, or move. So, rather than my usual plan of swim a few laps in the pool, I opted for floating around a little in the leisure pool at my gym. Move from one spot to another trying to steer clear of children doing what children do in the pool. Things like screaming, throwing toys around, swimming around without looking where they're going, effectively turning leisure swim time into a sneaking mission. I was rather successful at this, right up until a boy who appeared to be around 7 or 8 years old decided to spike a beach ball into the back of my head. Wasn't a huge one or very heavy little damage on my end. I figure it might have been a mistake, so I reclaim the beach ball and give it to the boy who'd thrown it at me. Less than a minute later, I get doinked again, and so I reclaim the ball and ask the kid nicely to stop throwing stuff at me. He nods and grins, and I go back to what I was doing. 3 guesses what happened next. If you needed more than one to assume the boy spiked that ball on the back of my head for the 3rd time, see me after class. So, after strike 3, I grabbed the ball and asked the kid where Mom was. Mom, as it turns out, was reading a book on a lounge chair poolside. Please note this place has an excessive number of lifeguards, not as negligent as it would be at a hotel pool. So I dragged the child and his ball up to Mom and explained that the kids beaned me with a beach ball 3 times, and that's kinda not cool. Mom decided to do the head toss someone does where they're rolling their eyes behind huge sunglasses and said something to the effect of, "It's a beach ball. Boys will be boys." I toss the ball onto Mom's legs and get back into the pool, keeping an eye out for the kid. A few minutes later, I heard muffled giggling behind me, and then I felt the soothing sensation of a beach ball to the back of my head for the 4th time. I reclaimed the ball, yet again, and intended on making eye contact with the kid and popping their ball right in front of them. But then, the bad idea fairy rapped me sharply on the head with their magic wand, and I had an evil grin, not unlike the grin the kid gave me after strike number 1. So I tell the kid to come here, I want to show you something. And then I submerge the ball under the water and pinch the air nozzle, which makes air bubbles shoot out. Happens to look exactly like someone was tooting underwater. He's not strong enough to submerge the air-filled ball, so I tell him to get on top of it and use his body weight to sink the ball. He managed to do that, and his face lit up like it was Christmas morning and he'd gotten everything he'd asked for. He promptly swam off and found other people to annoy. I didn't get a ball thrown at me, and the kid's mom was pissed that she had to blow up the beach ball again. Was actually asking her son how it went flat so fast when it was a brand new beach ball in between big gasps of breath trying to fill the ball up. Kid just points at me on my way to the locker room. I wave and say, "Oh, boys will be boys." The next story is titled, Trespasser Demands I Replace His Car. Okay, so I'm going to preface this post by saying that the entrance to my property is a standard driveway through roughly 20 meters of wooded area before the driveway opens up to about the same size as a standard American two-lane roadway. My home sits about 500 meters back off of the road, and I've sculpted my driveway, as well as a pass in front of my home and a lot of my backyard into a drift track. We have two giant no trespassing signs at the road-facing side of the woods, as well as a speed limit 15 inches sign 10 meters beyond the woods, mainly to remind my friends not to be dickheads on their way in when the track isn't hot. Everything is above board with the county, my homeowner's insurance, and local PD. Now, with that out of the way, I went to the port today to pick up a much-awaited 1997 Nissan Stagea we are building for my mate. As the mate and I are pulling down the drive in the truck, pulling the trailer W/the car on it, my mate yells, "What in the hell is that?" and points off to the corner of the paved part of my property where I have a medium-sized shed which I keep landscaping things like a tractor, golf cart, etc. in. I look over to see the nose of a 2016 to 2017 Mustang stick out of a now-collapsed shed and a guy lying on the pavement next to it. We immediately drove straight over with haste. As we pull up, our EP sits up from his prone position and starts yelling about suing me, calling me an AH, and a bunch of other names. I yelled as loud as I could, "Hey!" Then said, "Who the F are you and what are you doing on my property? Why is your car in my shed?" To which EP responds, "I'm going to sue you as your racetrack isn't safe and you owe me a new car." By this point, my mate is already on the phone W/911 and has hopped back into the truck. I explain to EP that he's trespassing and in fact he owes me a shed and probably a few other things, including a tractor. EP starts to limp toward me, screaming that he's going to own my property and I won't have a pot to piss in when he's done with me. I decide to just get back into the truck and wait on the police. Roughly 15 minutes later, 2 police cars come screaming down my drive with their lights and sirens on and see EP beating on the window of my truck with his hands. PD immediately handcuff him and then my mate and I step out of the truck. EP told police that he has been driving past my property all summer and hearing engines and tires squelching from the roadway, and finally decided that he was going to run a few laps today. That he saw the no trespassing signs but didn't think they were there for him. Who else would they be there for, though? EP was arrested for malicious destruction of property. A tow company in town came and impounded his vehicle, and I was finally able to see that the entire shed and everything in it is a total loss. EP did leave in an ambulance, though he should be fine. Insurance is going to have a field day with this one. I'd just like to add that that particular shed sits 25 feet off of the paved surface. I really hope next year doesn't have as many stressful events as this one. I'm starting by adding a gate with a code to enter the property this week. It's unfortunate that I have to go to these lengths, but I guess some people just can't read signs or understand the concept of private property. As a side note, I'm grateful that my mate and I were able to catch this guy in the act before he caused any more damage to my property or himself. It's also a good reminder to always be vigilant and keep an eye out for any unusual activity on your property. In any case, I'm just glad that no one was seriously injured, and I hope that this incident serves as a warning to anyone else who might be thinking of trespassing on my property. As for me, I'll be working with my insurance company to figure out how to replace the shed and its contents, and I'll be taking steps to improve the security of my property to prevent any further incidents like this from happening in the future. Overall, it's been a stressful day, but I'm grateful for my mate's quick thinking and the prompt response of the police. Here's hoping that things calm down from here on out. In my opinion, this story highlights the importance of respecting private property and following posted signs. It's unfortunate that the EP in this story didn't seem to understand this basic principle and caused significant damage to the property as a result. It's also interesting to see how the property owner was able to handle the situation calmly and responsibly by calling the police and working with their insurance company to address the damage. Overall, it's a cautionary tale that serves as a reminder of the importance of being mindful of others' property and the consequences of ignoring posted signs. The next story is titled, HOA Claims I Must Join Them and Threatens to Fine Me If I Don't Remove My Illegal Pool. I had always loved my quiet and peaceful neighborhood where I had lived with my family for the past 15 years. We had a beautiful home with a big yard and a pool that my 2 daughters loved. But that peace was about to be shattered when the HOA was formed. The HOA was something that I had been against from the beginning, but more than enough people voted for it to form. I refused to sign the papers that would make my family and I join them because I did not agree with their rules. The HOA had unreasonable rules that would cause a lot of heartbreak and expenses for my family and me. One of the rules was that we could not have any large dogs, which was ridiculous because we had 2 beloved dogs that were part of our family. The next rule was that no houses could have in-ground pools, which was even more unreasonable because we had a pool that we had installed before the HOA was formed. The third issue was that our home was not aligned with the rules and regulations they were putting in place for the aesthetics of the neighborhood. At first, I thought I could reason with the HOA and find a compromise, but it was clear that they were unwilling to budge. They gave everyone 3 months to fix all the violations, but it would be unreasonably expensive. I was determined to find a good lawyer and fight the violations, especially the ones regarding the pool and dogs, since this was stuff that I had before the HOA. With extensive research, I was able to find a lawyer that specialized in HOA cases. We went through all the regulations and found that some of them were not even legal, and they could not force us to make the changes they were demanding. We were able to present our case and win against the HOA, but the victory was not easy. The HOA members were not happy about losing the case, and they were angry with me for taking them to court. The tension between us grew, and things started to get ugly. I received threatening letters from the HOA members, and they even went as far as vandalizing my home. I was scared for my family's safety, and I knew I had to do something. I hired a security company to install cameras around my property and hired a lawyer to help me file a restraining order against the HOA members who had been threatening me. The legal battle was long and exhausting, but I finally won, and the HOA members were ordered to stay away from me and my family. After the victory, the neighborhood was still divided, and there was still a sense of animosity towards me and my family. I knew that I had to find a way to bring the community together, and I came up with an idea. I decided to host a neighborhood block party at my home where everyone could come together and celebrate our victory. I invited all the neighbors, including the HOA members, hoping that we could put the past behind us and move forward. At first, the party was going well, and everyone seemed to be enjoying themselves. But as the night progressed, tensions began to rise, and things quickly spiraled out of control. The HOA members had too much to drink, and they began to cause trouble, insulting me and my family, and causing damage to our property. It was a chaotic scene, and I knew that I had to take action to protect my family and my home. I called the police, and they arrived on the scene quickly, arresting the HOA members responsible for the damage and disturbances. The neighborhood was in shock, and it was clear that things were not going to be the same again. The aftermath of the block party was a difficult time for my family and me. We were shaken up by the events that had transpired, and we felt more isolated than ever before. But I refused to give up on our community. I continued to reach out to my neighbors, hoping to rebuild the relationships that had been damaged. Slowly but surely, things began to improve. My neighbors who had previously supported the HOA began to see the flaws in their reasoning and apologized for their actions. We began to work together to create a new set of rules for the neighborhood, ones that were fair and reasonable for everyone. In the end, we were able to come to a compromise that satisfied both sides. We were able to keep our pool and our dogs, but we also agreed to some minor changes that would help improve the appearance of the neighborhood. We all learned an important lesson about the importance of compromise and communication. Update. It's been a few years since the HOA debacle, and I'm happy to say that the neighborhood has become a much more harmonious place. We've all learned to respect each other's differences and work together to create a community that we can all be proud of. Our block parties are now a regular occurrence, and they're a great opportunity for us all to come together and celebrate our community. We've even started a neighborhood watch program to help keep our streets safe. Looking back on the whole experience, I realized that it was a difficult time, but it was also a valuable lesson. It taught me the importance of standing up for what I believe in, even when it's not easy, and it showed me that sometimes even the most contentious conflicts can be resolved through communication and compromise. I'm proud to be a member of this community, and I'm grateful to my neighbors for working with me to create a better, more welcoming place to call home. In my opinion, this story is a great example of how conflict can arise in even the most peaceful of neighborhoods. It's understandable that people want to preserve the appearance of their community, but sometimes the rules put in place can seem arbitrary and unfair. I admire the protagonist for standing up for what they believe in, even when it wasn't easy, and for finding a way to bring the community back together in the end. It's a reminder that compromise and communication are key to resolving conflicts and building a better community. The next story is titled, "My Mom Feels Entitled to My Inheritance Money. She wants to use it to put a down payment on a house." I only found out about it 6 years later because I looked into a cabinet in our house and did some research. I, 24F, found out earlier this year that I was supposed to receive around $160,000 in inheritance money when my father passed away. I found out by looking into a cabinet in our house. I was compelled to do so because my mother acts rich or poor whenever it suits her and exhibits other strange behavior. I found a letter that was addressed specifically to me from the life insurance company that had my inheritance. All I needed to do was submit some paperwork and they'd give me a check. I'm not sure how, but my mother somehow submitted documents for me and even cashed the check that was in my name. I'm also not sure why she felt entitled to it when she got $500K in inheritance herself. When I confronted her about it, she obviously did not take it well. She was very adamant that it's her money, until I informed her that after I found the documents, I called the life insurance company and received photocopies of the check, the submitted documents, etc. After I told her that, she tried negotiating with me, stating that she can give me $10,000 to start with, and then $2,000 every month. I said no. I said she will guilt me into delaying her payments if we go that route. She tells me she will be homeless if I get all the money at once. I eventually make her show me her bank statements. As far as I know, she has around $330,000. In addition, she's been making 6 figures with her job for the past 3 years. Homeless, my ass. I told her I need a good amount of money if I want to have any chance of moving out. I wanted to move out with my friend, but my mom took way too long to give me any money. I received $50,000 from her. Like a week or so later, she started asking if she could borrow $20,000 for a month. She said she needs it in her bank account so that the lender can approve of the condo or house she wants to buy. She asked if I will be okay, and I stupidly told her that I'd be getting grants from school too. She then wanted to borrow $20K on top of the grant money by passive-aggressively mentioning it whenever she could. A few weeks later, she forced me to go with her to the bank to withdraw $20,000. This was on October 3rd. On November 23rd, I asked her to give me $2,000. I told her it's been almost 2 months and I want a portion of it back, via text. She gives me the silent treatment, in text and in person. The next day I try calling her. She starts crying hysterically, saying, "I knew I shouldn't have trusted you with money. What are you doing? Drugs? Are you gambling? Why are you so mean? You ruined my holiday. You've ruined my life. You're abnormal. You're just doing this because you're behind in your life and you're desperate. You don't have utilities to pay for. I spent so much money on food the past month." I'm not exaggerating when I say I've never told her to buy me food or make me food, but she always uses it as a form of guilt. A couple of days later, we have a 4-hour argument. During this argument, I was so disgusted with her behavior that I told her that I want nothing to do with her. A couple of days after that, to my surprise, she came into my room and asked me to hug her. She started crying and said that she just suppresses her thoughts and feelings. She said she'll give me $500,000 now and then $500,000 on December 22nd. What the hell? I swallowed my anger for a couple of days, but then I could no longer hold it in. I wasn't giving her the silent treatment, but I wasn't looking at her or initiating any form of talking. She noticed this and started asking what's wrong. She said, "It's the money, isn't it?" and then repeated the same things she did last time. "Are you gambling? You have no utilities, etc." And again, she made it very clear that she wants to buy a condo or a house. I just can't remember which. I told her I'm mad at her because you told me you needed $20K for a month. It's been over 2 months and now you're still not giving it, so you lied. After this, she started acting like she was about to cry, and then she left the house. She then transferred another $500,000. I haven't talked to her since. It infuriates me that she thinks she's entitled to this money. Why do you need a house? You're getting old and you're single. Secondly, not only was this money only in your account in the first place because you committed fraud, but now I let you borrow money and you're going to treat it like it's an allowance. It's my money, legally! Get over it! You already got $500,000 before you took my money. Since I was 18, I've been working minimum wage jobs. She's made it so clear as day that she thinks her needs are way above mine. I don't have utilities, I don't have a career yet, so I'm less important. Even if that's factually true, I'm your child and that money is legally mine. Also, I just want to share this example of her behavior that I just remembered. When I was 19, I was working at a tutoring place in addition to a restaurant while taking 16 units in college with no car. I was leaving the house one day to go get a haircut. My mom then asked me, "Where are you going?" I told her I'm going to get a haircut. She then says, verbatim, "Really? You're supposed to be using that money to help me." That's how entitled she is. At this point, she received $660,000, while her child, who is a full-time student with 2 jobs and no car, is not important enough to use the money they earned from their job to get a haircut. I'm so mad, and I just have a huge problem with getting this taken care of because I hate making people uncomfortable. This is also why I usually cannot blindside a person by randomly bringing an issue up. I usually have to text them first, but I'm starting to think that that's never a good idea. Ugh. In my opinion, this story is a sad example of how greed and entitlement can poison even the closest family relationships. It's disappointing to see how the mother in this story is willing to go to such lengths to take money that is rightfully her daughter's. It's also unfortunate to see how the daughter is struggling to assert her own rights in this situation. Hopefully, they can find a way to resolve this issue and repair their relationship in the process. The next story is titled, I take an entitled woman's cart full of groceries. I'm a man in my 50s and I am at Walmart. I hear a girl in her 20s who works at the store nicely say, "Excuse me, ladies." I see 2 entitled women in their 40s talking in front of the doors that the workers use to restock the store. The entitled women look at the worker with the disdain of royalty being interrupted by a filthy peasant. The worker, with her empty supply cart, again tells the entitled women that she needs to get through. Again, the entitled women blow her off with pursed lips and a dirty look. Now, I have a particular sensitivity to people mistreating workers, and these women have disrupted my delicate sensibilities. I walk past the entitled women, snagging one of the carts full of groceries, and I take off. It takes them a moment to notice before they pursue me. I quickly traverse the back aisle and turn the corner towards the front of the store. One of the entitled women tries to pull the cart away from me, but I make it all the way to the front of the store before letting go. I make a clean getaway and go back to get my cart. Next to the restock doors is the other woman's cart. Now, before you call me the a-hole, I'm fully aware, but these people needed to be taught a lesson, and I'm just the one compelled to step up. I grab the cart and head off to the camping section. I take the cold stuff from the cart. I needed milk and eggs anyway, so bonus. Later I felt bad that some Walmart worker would have to restock the cart from the camping section. When I went back, the cart was gone. This happened like a year ago and I didn't think much about it. The other day I was at a restaurant with my extended family. One of the waitresses kept looking at me. It took me a while to put it together. When she walked past, I said, "Didn't you used to work at Walmart?" She got excited and exclaimed that she thought it was me. I had a haircut and lost some weight since then. She filled me in on the aftermath. The ladies complained to the manager that a guy tried to steal their stuff for no reason. The manager figured there was more to the story. The entitled women wanted the manager to find me and have me arrested. The worker girl told her what really happened, and it has since become store folklore. I told her I posted the story in Am I the A-hole and got voted the A-hole. She said, "You're not an a-hole, you are a legend." My sister told her another similar story from when we were kids, but I'll save that one for another day. In my opinion, the story depicts a situation where someone takes a stand against entitled behavior towards a store worker. While the approach of taking someone else's cart may seem controversial, it's clear that the intention was to teach a lesson rather than harm the entitled women. The story also highlights the impact of one's actions and how it can create a ripple effect that leads to unintended consequences. Overall, the story serves as a reminder to treat others with respect, regardless of their social status or profession. The next story is titled, Don't Cut in Front of a Parent with Their Child, and Then Ask Us to Take Your Photo. We lived in Japan for 2 fantastic years, and one of the things my kids loved to do was go to Universal Studios Japan, particularly the Sanrio area. The kids couldn't get enough of Hello Kitty. Apparently, neither could grown-ass adults. Midday at the park, they dress up some poor soul as Hello Kitty to come out and greet the horde of fans. That day, there were probably 100+ people surrounding the mascot. Well, my kids wanted a picture with the huge furry feline, so I sighed, got in the back of the line, and patiently waited. We were finally next in line when a middle-aged woman dressed in cat attire cut in front of my 6-year-old and me. We were shocked and didn't immediately react. Was this grown-up seriously cutting in front of a line of children? Then, before I had a chance to say anything, she turned around and asked me to take her picture with Hello Kitty. I could hear a chorus of grumbling behind us. At this point, I was ready to throw her iPhone into the fountain, but I thought for a second, smiled, and agreed. I took multiple pictures in portrait and landscape modes, each time coaching her for the cutest poses. A few people behind us were gleefully watching over my shoulder as I either put my finger over her face or cut her head off every single photo. The middle-aged cat lady thanked me and left so she could check the photos away from the crowd. We took our photos with the cat. They turned out great. And as we walked away, we saw the lady angrily scrolling through her photos. The mascot's allotted time was also up about that time, so she didn't have a chance to go back and retake her photos. In my opinion, the story showcases an instance of selfish behavior in a public place, where a middle-aged woman cuts in line and then asks for a favor from the person she cut in front of. It is interesting to see how the protagonist of the story handles the situation with patience, and even manages to get a bit of revenge with the pictures. The story also highlights the popularity of Hello Kitty, not just among kids, but also adults. Overall, it's a relatable and entertaining story. The last story is titled "A Big Group Thinks They Own the Forest" because they come all the time. A few months ago, towards the end of the season in this area, I went camping with my friends. We were 3 women. The spot we chose was on a cliff with a great view of a canyon and the creek at the bottom. The area allows dispersed camping, and there are very few spots with that view, and it's first come, first serve. When we arrived, only one spot was left, with the view hidden behind trees but only a few feet away. The view could only be accessed by walking straight through our camp. I think there are other spots you can hike to without going through a campsite. On our first night there, a couple, 2 men, walked into our camp saying they wanted to see the view. I wasn't super comfortable because you can't trust a stranger in a forest, and they were in our space, but they were only there for a few minutes and left. The next day we went to watch the sunset on the cliff and had left all our stuff lying around camp when we started hearing cars, dogs, voices, and screaming kids. 2 cars pulled up to our camp and walked right in, making themselves comfortable. We ran back to see all of our space was completely invaded. Kids were under our tarp and running around the tent poles, people around our fire, etc. We had a small puppy with us that was terrified of the new dog, but these people didn't care. A woman explained that they live nearby and love coming to see the view. I was in absolute shock at the disrespect. Everyone is allowed to enjoy nature, and it was a public spot, but you have to respect if someone is there first. At least have the decency to ask. As they were leaving well after sunset, the same woman said they'd be coming later that night to see the stars. My friends were so angry, and I was still in shock. As they were loading their car, I ran up to them and said the first thing that came to mind. I asked one of the men, "Hey, when you come back later, are you planning on bringing the kids?" "Man, I'm not sure. Why is that?" Me. "Well, the thing is, we're out here to do heavy drugs. We're starting in a few minutes, and things might get pretty wild, and I wouldn't want to expose children to that. You as adults might be able to handle it, but I don't know what will happen. I don't do any drugs and only drink occasionally." They never came back, thank God, and hopefully they learned something about respecting people's space. In my opinion, this story highlights the importance of respecting others' personal space and boundaries, especially in public areas like camping grounds. It's disappointing to see that some people feel entitled to invade others' space just because they have frequented the area before. The protagonist's response to the situation was bold and creative, and it's satisfying to see that it worked in deterring the group from returning. Overall, this story serves as a reminder to always be respectful of others and their space, even in public places. The next story is titled,
"He lied to me, so I left his number everywhere. I've been dating this guy I really liked for 3 months. I was happy and I thought things were going great. Every time I would bring up my concerns, he assured me it was all in my head and I needed to relax. He had at least 2 chances to leave me alone. Even though I liked him, I just couldn't shake the feeling. The day before yesterday, he showed me something funny on Facebook that he had posted. But when I went back the next morning so I could send it to one of my friends, it wasn't there. So I started searching him under a different name, and I found his real Facebook and all the pictures and videos of his actual long-term girlfriend in another state. He looked very much in love, and I was very disappointed because I never knew and wouldn't have stayed around if I would have known. And I gave him chances to leave me alone. So yesterday I spent all day signing him up for everything I could find that asked for a number. Cat facts, weather updates in different states, car insurance quotes, life insurance, Bible verses, coupons, everything I could find. His phone will be so full of spam. Then I posted screenshots of our conversations all over their pictures together from as recent as the night before. And I took out his name so the number was visible at the top. He was so mad at me. I've never done anything like this before, but for years men have been lying to me, breaking my heart, making me feel stupid, and it hurts, and I just snapped. But I do not feel bad and will not apologize. The next story is titled, Compact Parking Spots Are for Compact Cars. You park there, you get noticed. I work in a large office building with ample parking. There are few, maybe half a dozen, compact spots available in the entire lot. I have come into work in the morning, and after lunch I've seen people park a 15-passenger van in a compact space. Like, who does that? Side note for those of you who don't know, compact spaces are just that. They are compact. They are smaller than most other parking spots, and it leaves very little room on either side of your big-ass ride for anyone to maneuver their doors properly, let alone get out without slamming their doors into the neighboring cars. My car has been damaged more than I care to share, and I've had to climb into my passenger side door because of jerks that decide they're more important than the person they parked next to. After discussing this issue with the building owners, and they don't care, I decided to go petty revenge on them. I came into work today to find yet again 3 vehicles that were absolutely not compact vehicles. It irritated me, but it wasn't until I came back from lunch and 3 new huge vehicles were parked there that I finally had enough. I pulled a pack of Post-it notes out of my briefcase and wrote lovely little notes to each vehicle, explaining to them how much of an asshole they are. I then left one on each driver's side window. Once I got to the building, I turned around to make sure I could see them waving in the breeze. I hope that every person that went past saw what it said. They were not parked there when I left. Today was a good day. The next story is titled, So Much Fun Pulling This One Off. This is a 2-part story. It happened back in the 70s, but I still laugh when I think about it. So I used to sell car insurance, and the owner had 2 separate offices. I was friends with the girl in the other office. I'll call her Beth. One night we got together after work for dinner. She was showing me a lot of pictures of her BF. I saw a really nice-looking guy in one of the pictures and told Beth to find out who he was and if he was single. Later, she told me it was her BF's cousin, and he was definitely interested in meeting me. The next night, he called me, and we had a great conversation. He asked me out to dinner, and of course I said yes. So you can imagine how shocked and disappointed I was when Beth's BF showed up instead of his cousin. He admitted he was the one who called me. He said he was sorry, but he enjoyed talking to me so much, and blah, blah, blah. I was pissed, but I will say no one screws with my friends, so my revenge was already churning away on the inside, but I was all sugar and spice on the outside. So he let me pick the restaurant, and I picked the most expensive one in the area, and the most expensive meal, as well as a boatload of appetizers. So we had our dinner, and I was very honest on the way home. I told him I really didn't feel right about going behind Beth's back because she was a good friend. When we got to the house, I flung the door open and ran across the front lawn to my house. The next day, even though I didn't want to hurt Beth, I told her exactly what happened. She was pissed, and the revenge plan went into effect. Part 2. We decided I would call him and grovel and say I made a mistake and really did want to see him again. We made a date for after work by Beth's office. He was very excited. So the night of our meeting up again was set up. You probably guessed it by now. Beth showed up instead of me. He called me the next day and was pissed. How could I trick him like that? That was so wrong. I said, "You got a taste of your own medicine," and just laughed. Of course he hung up. That was the best revenge ever. Beth and I laughed about it for a long time. The next story is titled, The Revenge May Be Small, but it has a good personality. So I wanted to buy a new game for my Switch. Specifically, I wanted Shining Pearl. I already had Brilliant Diamond and wanted some of the game exclusions that could only be found on Shining Pearl. Well, money is tight right now, and I don't have much to spare. So I went to Facebook Marketplace. I found a guy selling a used Pearl his son no longer wanted. Perfect, I thought. I end up messaging him and buying it. He said that he will ship it to me at EOD. I never get shipping confirmation, and then, the next day, I go to message him, and I'm blocked. Well, crap. I have been scammed. I had bought about 20 things off Facebook Marketplace, so the level in which I trusted the sellers had gone up because I never encountered a problem. So me and my friend found him on Facebook and waited until he decided to sell something again. This time, he was selling a different game that was for PS5. My friend contacted him, said he was at work, and could he text him? Bingo, we got his number. Later that day, after I had time to prepare, I sent him a text from my phone. Hey, just to let you know, you scammed me out of $20 for Shining Pearl, and I learned my lesson. But now, I'm going to annoy the crap out of you. I enlisted his number on every single thing I could find. I signed him up with all kinds of political callers, prank numbers, everything. The more it called or texted, the better it was. I even found a website that will send whoever you choose a random fact about Trump every hour. I went on Craigslist and made a post saying free hen and free cow to a good home. Selling the land, don't have time for an auction. Where I am, from what I know, he got about 100 calls alone asking about the chickens and the cows. I went on Zillow and said I wanted to sell my house and gave them his number, telling them I wanted to speak to an agent. I know for a fact he won't be able to get rid of that. I wish I knew how many calls and texts he got and at what point he finally turned his phone off. My hope is that he had to get a new number, and if he did, I hope it cost him some money, like $20. Even if he gets it changed with no fee, the annoyance of having to give everyone your new number is good enough. As the title says, it's not the biggest revenge, and I didn't get my money back, but I did hopefully cause him some suffering, and I learned a lesson. The next story is titled, You're Blocking the Drive-Thru. I drive a concrete mixer and was just getting done pouring a drive-thru for a new Chick-fil-A going up in the area. The drive-thru is fresh and wet cement. Once again, she refused to comply and started beeping her horn again. I've had it. I'm washing down the truck when I hear loud honking, not thinking anything of it. As I'm in a shopping center, I keep washing the inside of the truck down. I then hear more honking and look over to the front to see a Karen EM with her head out her window, full Karen haircut, then screaming, "Move out of the way! You're blocking the ducking drive-thru!" I see she has 2 empty car seats in the back and a sticker in her window saying baby's on board. I'm glad her kids weren't in the car when this happened. I'm not a fan of cussing. I came down off the ladder to go and explain that it isn't open yet. As I walk toward the car, she starts moving her car closer to me. She is now about 2 feet from the front of my truck. My truck is back to the building. I keep thinking, how exactly does she expect me to get out? As I get to her window, I let her know nicely that the Chick-fil-A location is not open yet and inform her that she will need to move back so I can move my truck from the fenced-off area. EM is having nothing of it. EM is adamant that I move my truck out of the way so she can get into the drive-thru. Well, I tried. I asked her to move her car back so I can move my truck out of the fenced area. Once again, she refused to comply and started beeping her horn again. I've had it. My truck horn, for those who don't know what one sounds like, is very, very loud. If you're too close, they can scare you and even give you a ringing in your ears. As she was refusing to move and constantly honking her horn, I decided to show her mine. Honk, 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 and I started to move forward. EM moved her car back quickly. She must have not have checked her mirrors or blind spot because she backed up into a stop sign that was about 75 feet away. Of course, EM got out and came over to start blaming me for her own actions. I forced her to back up into the sign. I am 100% at fault for her car damage. And I rushed her car so she had to avoid me by backing up as fast as she could. I love this one. EM called the police soon after. The site foreman saw the entire event, but he doesn't speak much English and likely already had to deal with various people trying to get into his site. So he just sat back and watched until the police arrived. We each told our stories, and of course, EM made hers sound like it was a life or death situation, where she was a kind woman, just trying to make it to the new Chick-fil-A for lunch, and I was blocking it just to be cruel to her for no reason of her own. That, without warning, I charged her vehicle and forced her to rush and back into the stop sign. The officer came over and asked if it was true. I replied, "No, sir." "I have a dash cam with audio. You can see if you could play the file on a computer." Lucky for me, our foreman offered his laptop. EM's story fell apart quick. The officer's face turned to a frown that I swear could have made the Pope feel guilty. He walked over to her, went straight to his handcuffs, and began to read her rights to her. EM was charged with obstruction of justice, reckless driving, and misuse of 911. As she was being placed into the back of the police charger, I saw a man coming over with a 2-child stroller that had 2 babies riding in it. The officer explained the situation to him, and he honestly didn't look surprised. He seemed to just nod and walked quietly over to the car, took pictures, and unloaded his kids with the stroller and left. I feel bad that he had to go through that, but I'm under the impression that it wasn't the first time she has done something like this. I didn't press charges, but I reported everything to my company for their discretion too. I feel like I've ran into more and more of these forms of people since COVID began. The next story is titled, "Substitute Teacher Scared into Retirement." I was on the fringe of this story, but it was back in the long ago age known as 1990. I was a 7th grader at the time, and over my elementary school career, there had been an older substitute teacher named Mrs. Young. Really, this woman was a nasty piece of work, constantly shushing people and telling the students that they would get in trouble basically for existing around her. One Friday, I leave early, and it turns out I had pneumonia. I was going to be off the next week. It turned out that the pneumonia had actually been a good thing in my case. Our last class of the day alternated between French and history, which were both taught by the same teacher. That week, she went off with migraines. And who did the class get? Mrs. Young, and her condescending and nasty attitude. Hearing about it later, she had tormented the class all week. They got their revenge on Friday. She came into the room and they struck. They slammed the door behind her. They pushed the furniture around. They opened and closed the blinds. They shouted, "The devil is come," and "Satan rules." This little old lady ran out of the classroom, down the hall, down the stairs, and to the first floor and out of the school. This little old lady ran out of the classroom, down the hall, down the stairs, to the first floor, and out of the school. Never came back. I come back on Monday, and the history French teacher homeroom teacher, and principal are railing on my class for scaring that old lady into retirement. They mention that they would have been responsible if they'd given her a heart attack. I was shocked at hearing that they'd done this. End of the day, the whole class, save for me, got a week's detention. I hated that old lady, but I never would have done what they did. Still, they gave me an interesting story. The last story is titled, Negative Coworker Gets the Fax Calls. I work with a lady, Nancy, and boy does she fit the negative Nancy saying. She knows everything until you have a question, then she doesn't know anything about that. She spends most of her hours looking for everyone's mistakes and then attacks the people who made them. It's all around a very toxic environment she has created. The boss and his wife are seriously the best people I've ever worked for, which is why I haven't left. Well, Friday and this morning, I kept getting a call, and as soon as I would answer, it would beep a couple of times. Maybe like it was trying to send a fax? Maybe not, though, as I have answered the phone to an awful loud, screeching noise that was definitely a fax. Well, anyway, I figured out how to add it to the block list, thinking it wouldn't be able to reach us then, as I'm the first point of contact for the company. I was wrong in the best way. It automatically skips my phone and goes straight to Nancy's. I kept waiting for her to come ask why I'm transferring them to her. When I'm not after the big sigh, she lets out. It's little things, you know. My Monday has been made. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you would like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.